Ah, I see you online. There you are. So, nevertheless, let me get started. Oh, I'm already recording. What do you know? Nevertheless, here. So, first, a little test-related information that usually gets your attention. Okay. I threw out three questions because they were too ambiguous. In other words, I looked at the Scantron, and if you got it right, it doesn't matter. If you got it right. If you got it wrong, you just got credit for it. That's what I told you. So it could only help your grade. I don't think anybody missed. Maybe one person had all three incorrect, but I think everybody had at least one. So one or two was common. So it helped your grade, not your grade. I ignored yours. No, I do have the scores, but here's the other. It'll be if you want to look at them. The lab is the time. I'll bring them to lab for us to look at them. Okay, with the exams. I'll get them posted probably tomorrow sometime. Does that work for you? Can you? It's called delayed gratification. So we exist by. It's why we wait to get paid. Like I'm working, but I don't get paid till the start of the next month. Can you handle it?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Might swallow it.
Yeah, meditate, yoga.
Right.
Get in touch with your one-legged downward dog.
Okay.
Sun salutation. Did yoga? Do you do yoga?
No.
Oh, there you go.
I said I'll try.
What?
I said I'll try.
What's up? What? Why am I starting with this group? I need therapy. Okay, here. A couple of these parts of the brain we're going to look at. So I don't have anything. The alternative was me just to do spinal cord, but I thought I would wanted to do a little bit of function that was there and refer back to these. Remember, so the two big areas on motor aspect, we have this area, and you'll see the name, we call it Broca, and effectively this is the area, and most of these are on the left. So there's some. It's not like they're only on the left and not on the right, but there's a larger amount of activity on the left side than the right side. Would be the same way, and particularly on the left for spoken word. So again, when I said, "Is that all right?" and you responded to me, okay, you formed an answer, and you gave me the answer. Whatever was, it doesn't have to necessarily be appropriate, but you were answering my question, understanding my question. People, again, strokes typically affect motor rather than sensory. Okay, and so the motor nerves are much more sensitive than the sensory nerves to lack of oxygen that are there. It's not that they're insensitive, but motor will go first. And so typically we see this. It's got a fancy name called an aphasia. Because you have difficulty expressing the answer, it's called a motor or expressive aphasia. And that is, we see that typically at Broca's area. In other words, if you ever try to work with a stroke patient, you're asking a simple question. What day is it? And you know the answer, just trying to get it out. And understand it's not only speaking, although that predominates. It's not like you hand a piece of paper. The other area, Wernicke's, is a receptive. This is when the sensory is there. Receptive aphasia. And their motor capacity is fine. It's a little unusual. Receptive to sensory aphasia. They will answer very cogent, grammatically correct sentences that typically have nothing to do with the question. So it's a little, and you see both of these. It's worth looking. So here's that Wernicke's area and Broca's. I mentioned that depending on, I don't know where you're going career-wise, but if you're going into graduate levels, these are kind of, depending on where you're going, these are good names to know going forward. And it sort of highlights, these are useful, so they've mapped this out a little bit. Okay? And so I wanted to talk about some of these structures that are there. again, the two big, let me go back. I'm going to do a little back and forth because I want to be thorough. I did this a little fast because I wanted to be able so we could dissect the brain. And I hope you got something out of that. And the same thing next week, I'm going to try to get through, make sure that we not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, whatever date that is, and we'll dissect the eye. That's the next dissection. Yeah. So that central sulcus, which you couldn't see on the sheet, the mound or gyrus anterior is the primary motor cortex. The one posterior, immediately posterior, is the primary sensory. When you see the term somatic, it means of the body. So if I felt something here, if I felt there was a splinter here or something like that, or a penny here, that's what's telling. That's somatic. My body telling me something rather than an organ necessarily. So when you ever see somatosensory or somatic, it means that. So this motor cortex, that's where the command to move. The name of this tract that we're going to get to when you do the spinal cord are called the pyramidal tract. You remember I talked about, hopefully on the medulla, those mounds in front of the lowest part of the brainstem are called the pyramids. These are the tracts. They're very famously known. These are large cells that are in that area, and the nerves are really long. I mean, where muscles you're going to see are maybe a foot long for an individual muscle cell when we get to the definition. A nerve cell, an axon, could be 3 meters long. I beg your pardon, could be a meter long, rather. I mean, think of it, something in a 6 foot, 6.5 foot tall individual, it's 2 nerve circuit. Brain to the lumbar sacral area of the spinal cord, and another nerve, big toe, 2 nerves. So imagine how long those could be. So cortical spinal means it goes from the cerebral cortex, that area that I was showing you, okay, the primary motor cortex, down and to the spine and then out toward the target. Long axons down the spinal cord. And we map them. And we've done this for sensory, although it's typically more often a 3 nerve circuit. We're going to get into the construction of the circuits when we look at the spinal cord. The circuits, I'm using the term circuit so it makes sense to you, but the real names that you're going to see are tracts with a T. So we'll talk about corticospinal tracts. There's a dorsal one and a lateral one, but we'll get there. So the name of that neat little upside down character that I showed you before is a homunculus. This is obviously the plural is homunculi, octopus, octopus. I told you how much I love plurals. Fish, sheeps. Love that. It's also animal groups. You know, either like a pride of lions. I love that. Herd of cows, sure, herd of cows. Didn't happen in Costello routine. You have no idea what I'm talking about. None, right? Oh Lord, you're in a different age. Help me. Here. So again, I commented this to you. How do we interact with the world? It shows you. Okay, we speak. We facial movements. Our extremities, and that's it. Notice when it comes to genitalia, there's no motor innervation by this system. The genitalia are innervated by something called the autonomic nervous system. We deal with that in physiology. There is limited sensation to those areas, depending on what your description is of limited, compared to how extensive it is here. And again, it's more autonomic when we start talking about sexualized excitation and stuff like that. But again, gastrointestinal, very non-specific. The areas that are largest are the ones where we really can identify where we feel things. How sensitive is the bottom of your foot, the palm of your hand, anything that comes on your face. I mean, I think 2 nights ago I'm asleep and there's a bug got in. I don't know where the bug got in because we had the door open. Cat has to go. He insists. So I thought that you might find that interesting. And so we've mapped that out. Premotor, so if we go back, I know I'm flipping back and forth. Here, this is the planning area, the premotor cortex. Okay, I'm going to move my hand. This is the preparation to execute the command. Am I going to grab it hard? Is it open? Can I knock it over? All those little decisions that you don't even think about, your brain's thinking about. Planning, movement, staging. Again, there's a lot of memory that goes on. We program these things. Same thing with your cerebellum. All of those, everything that we do, we develop a certain memory of. And athletes call it muscle memory, but we all do that. I mean, were you thinking about walking up those steps when you came in here? I don't think so. You just walked up the steps. Did you think about where you were going to sit? Oh, I always sit there. I just automatically go there. We don't think about, I'm going to get up, Lou. I got to push down now. I got to put down with my left leg first. Then you don't think about that. You just do it. That's the interesting stuff about that. And that's when you rehabilitate somebody, if you deal with somebody where things are damaged, this is built the same way. And again, voluntary actions depend on feedback. I'm stepping on something. I mean, is it wet? Is it not? Is it, all of those kinds of things. Did my dog visit there and I didn't clean it up? He's like that. No animal lovers in this class. Sad. Okay, so here's the Broca. I take issue with that. Okay, it's because it's not only speech. Again, I commented on this. These are some areas anatomically. When we get to the limbic system, you might want to go back and look at some of these areas that are part of it from an anatomy basis. And so primary motor cortex, stroke, paralyzes, contralateral or opposite. So this is the kind of thing, they're giving you some context. That premotor cortex, the muscle strength or ability to perform movements is not lost. But in that premotor area, think of the delicacy, the intricacy can be lost, okay? So, and that's what I was saying before, it's almost like when someone has a stroke, it really is a lot of education going on to try to get them to learn to use a walker, to see these things. And again, I told you the same thing. I watched the progress my granddaughter has made, and it was extraordinarily. I mean, from this time to the last time, her vocabulary improving. They didn't think she was ever going to talk. It's very, very. There's other issues that are involved, but it's. I mean, it's like night and day. Almost from month to month when we see the improvements that are there. Sensory areas, all of these things. There's a lot of areas that are involved in that. Where we sense the body, where I can feel the chair I'm sitting on, the chair you're sitting on, you're able to feel, okay? And then what does it mean? Oh, boy, they could use a new pad in this chair, or this stool, or I hate these chairs. My back's killing me. I wish I could adjust it. That's when you're beginning to associate it. And then visual areas, occipitally, auditory, temporally, vestibular and auditory are ingrained together. We'll see some of the anatomy. We'll deal with the physiology in the spring. Olfactory and gustatory, they're that deep layer, that insula that it's hard to demonstrate. And visceral is very generalized and limited. And then these are the proprioceptors, okay? General information comes in. Again, these proprioceptors are so important. We really don't understand them. I used to have a colleague, he was so interested. When we would talk together about a case, he'd go, are the sensorium intact? When we examine somebody neurologically, very cognizant about that because it paints quite a picture, okay? So all of these types of things are part of it. Those proprioceptors, you're always doing that. And it's just, a lot of times we'll do joint position. Close your eyes and you grab a finger like this. Tell them, I got a finger. You just move it side by side, because up and down they can sense. Am I moving? And you go, I'm moving your finger up and down. Tell me when I stop. Is it straight, up, or down? They may not be able to tell you. That's proprioception. So it's something you can easily test if you want it. And then all of those types of things, we determine what I'm feeling. Close your eyes. I would certainly know it was a marker. You could probably tell me what coin it was most of the time. I reach for my glasses every morning. Hopefully the dog has not decided to find them interesting. And then, again, in this area, and nearly half of your sensory circuits are dedicated to vision. Okay, there's an area anatomically called the calcarine sulcus, information from the retinas, and then first we see it, so to speak, processed. And then everything else we start to interpret. Color, form, movement. It takes a while, and then shuttling that information forward by those association fibers, the white matter, to the frontal lobe. How do I react to it? How can I tell if I have your attention? I mean, I look at your faces. Are you paying attention to me? Are you buried in your laptop? Are you furiously writing? No, I mean, all of those things you can tell what students are doing. At least I can. So that's something but at least you're able to do that. I mean, I used to be able. I was great with names and faces. I remember. I'm gifted with with a memory. Think nuggets about them. My patients would come in. I know the names of their kids, their grandkids, the town they lived. Easy. I know this. Now I'm lucky if I can. I don't even know all your names. I'm sorry. There's only 11 of them. But I'm trying. It's okay. Don't even go there. Again, auditory temporal lobes. There's an association area. Insula. Okay. Balance is a little more primitive. It's probably temporal and insula combined. Okay. Olfactory. Okay. Again, this is very, very primitive. And that's why, understand, primitive is what makes us, we hope, distinct from lesser animals is our cognitive ability, our ability to reason. We don't respond angrily. Okay. I mean, you could think that we have different, I hate to say it, my dog was wonderful, but not gifted. I mean, he's not winning any awards for you. Go fetch. He's okay with that. But I mean, nothing, no higher end functions. But think of how they respond. I mean, and you see that in someone who's they respond, a lot of times they respond very emotionally. And lower order animals, it's basically their senses. They respond to smell, they respond to other things in their environment. I mean, I always wonder why certain dogs set him off. Whether it's there's certain things that he recognizes or he senses, and it's like, I don't know what that dog did to you, but we're going to keep away. Okay. So a very, very primitive system. The limbic system is part of that. That's our emotional thing. Certain things trigger emotions, and when emotions overwhelm our conscious, that's when we have people with anger management issues. That's when we have people creating societal problems, for the most part. So there's a lot of other factors that are there. And again, taste is relatively primitive. And again, basically, we don't see a lot in and around this area that's there. Visual sensations. So we get a little signal, an upset stomach, our bladder's full, I better get to the bathroom sooner than later, whatever. That type of stuff. Same illustrations. And again, obviously visual cortex will lead to blindness. We look a little bit more in these types of things. That's somewhat intuitive. Okay. And there's different things. The association area, I mean, you kind of get the idea. Not that I would ask you that question. It's more of like, hey, if the association area is damaged, you can see, but you have no idea what you're looking at. How you discern that, I don't know. These are interesting, multimodal areas. meaning to information, store it. This is what our frontal lobe does. It has these areas, the anterior association, the posterior, and the limbic. This is the way, and this is really important, how where learning comes from, how we respond to certain circumstances. The things that potentially could trigger emotions that we may or may not have the ability to control. Or do we really want to control? I believe, and the author kind of states this, our world is enriched through our emotions, looking at things that give us pleasure. Looking at my granddaughter, how well she's doing, I'm sitting there going, this is great. So encouraged. When she was being an absolute brat, we're trying to get her to bed, not so good. Still love her, but it's okay. You see what you can get away with grandma and grandpa, that will deal. So the prefrontal, big area, complicated region right here. Intellect, cognition, recall, personality, all of this, read through it. The big thing to talk about that area. This was the tragedy of what was done. So if you have not seen the movie, I urge you to see it. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, a very, very young Jack Nicholson. A comparatively young Louise Fletcher. She's died recently. And his name's not. Wonderful character actor. It's where he first saw Danny DeVito. It's where he first saw a number. How do we do this? I'm telling you this sincerely because what they did, they were hospitalized for the insane, and we institutionalized a lot of people. They were either criminally or irreversibly insane. We did not understand it. And what they did when they had no success with harsh medicines and aggressive therapies that were at best limited, they lobotomized them. To make them less of a risk to society, they took out their frontal lobe, or a good part of it, after they tried the electroshock therapy and all that stuff. And they just changed them into basically for like a moving around vegetable. So allow me to do this. So and you can find it anywhere in any of these things. It was a wonderful play, and if you know who Michael Douglas is, when he had made quite a bit in acting, and he eventually ended up, and that's the young Jack Nicholson. He ended up producing this. He produced quite a few early on, and it won like the big five, all the big awards. Directing, Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress. If you heard the expression Nurse Ratched, this is where it comes from. This evil nurse who basically drove these guys into doing terrible things. That's the young Louise. Brilliant actress, just brilliant. So here's Nicholson, Fletcher, other people so if we saw Scatman Carruthers, Danny DeVito. Okay, the name's coming to me. Christopher Lloyd, first time we really saw that. They were from the New York metropolitan area. They were actors in shows and plays, and that's where he gleaned them from. And maybe to me the best, and he's hardly from that area, who has always made the rounds playing really off the wall people. He should have showed up sooner than this. I'm a little disappointed with them. Nicholson, Redfield, Brad Dourif. And he always plays very, very offbeat characters, and he really is it was very, very interesting. I love the characters that he does. I love movies like that. And take a look at, this is what it was like in the 50s. And this really brought our attention to how extraordinarily talented some of these people. Extraordinarily talented. It was one of the better movies ever made by any stretch of the imagination. We're trying to give you a little culture. Appreciate it. I don't do it all the classes. Here, posterior patterns, faces, written and spoken. Again, this is how you hopefully are understanding what I'm saying to you. That are there. Limbic. these important areas. The hippocampus is all about memory and the surrounding areas. The cingulate gyrus is the one that's right around that structure we looked at, the corpus callosum on the inside. Emotional impact that makes the scene important to us. Pivotal role in memories. How do we remember things? Okay. Like I can't unsee something I saw on my way down to DC, where it's the first time I have been that close to a vehicle that was completely engulfed in flames. And I'm going by there. My wife was driving. And what am I looking for to see if, tragically, if someone was caught in there? I didn't see any, but it doesn't mean there were. Because we're going by it. It had just burst into flames seconds, minutes before we went by. And I mean, a zillion trucks and everything. So interior and all these types of things, how it will affect them, all those types of things. And you can read through this if it interests you. We talked about the lateralization, the handedness, the right side, left side dominant. The reality is, in my experience, everybody has a little bit of both. It's just one side predominates. Like I said, I'm very purely left hemisphere dominant, and I don't have a lot of those skills. But I mean, there's certain things that I can do that surprise me in this manner. Okay, but, I don't think there's a purity in it. My wife's got a lot of both. Very bright, and certainly has a whole lot more creative skills and things like that. Did I mention to you how she earned her living? Goose clothes. I told you about the goose clothes? Yeah. I mean, she sews like a bandit. It's amazing. And it's good. I hate to see naked geese. Put some clothes on. You should be ashamed of yourself. No self-respecting goose would be like that. It's right there. And if you didn't know it, don't go up and go to pet the geese. Geese are not pleasant. Yeah, I mean, they are not your buddies. Moving on. Are those still awake? So here's the white matter, the 3 types you do have to know. That's structural. Okay. Corona radiata, I would be very familiar with. Probably use that diagram in a practical. That one possibly as well. And the basal nuclei, again, their role is very important with regard to Parkinson's. So if you remember the structures, a couple of pathways. So a lot of the way it works, we get to the neurotransmitters, we're going to talk about dopamine. Dopamine, which has nothing, it has something to do with addiction, that's how it has its name. Okay, dopamine, there's a pathway that goes, you might remember looking at it, called the substantia nigra. So it's called the nigro, and it goes to the corpus striatum. It's called the basically nigrostriatal dopamine pathway. We think that whatever has created a lack of dopamine going in this pathway is below Parkinson's-like. There's another pathway that goes, and remember this is the midbrain, where the substantia nigra is called the meso. Remember another name is the meso. Meso and limbic is your emotional center, your pleasure center. So the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. And that pathway plays a significant role in addiction. The part that makes something very addictive is the pleasure, the intensity of the pleasure, whatever you want. I'm not just talking about medication or illicit drugs. It can be whatever. Thrill seekers, whatever it is. It causes an immense burst of dopamine being released from that area, the midbrain, going to the limbic system. And we see that a lot. I mean, there's things that are I mean, crack cocaine, first dose can be instantly addictive. Some things are so powerful. It has to do with pleasure is number one. Number two, how rapidly it enters your system. And when you inhale something, it enters the fastest. Even faster than mainlining heroin. I used to teach a course in addictions. And then lastly, tolerance, meaning to get off, described as that, you have to, over time, you have to continue to take. Those are the three factors that generate addiction. So I'm not going to ask you that, but I want you to understand that we've studied these areas. So there's the substantia nigra. And again, this is the whole idea. These so closely associated with these areas as well. And those are that we looked at when doing the dissection, sort of within, you could see those bodies within the clefts that were the ventricles. So it's really, they were revealed when we sort of looked into those openings. All of these things. If you look at this type of stuff, irregularities here, really what these movement disorders are about. So if you're going to work with medications in your field, a lot of people take medications that work on the brain. A common side effect for some strong medications on the brain are movement disorders. They affect this area. Okay, the tracks, when we get to them, are called extrapyramidal. In other words, they're not the pure pyramidal tracks, which are the big gross motions. The fine tuning that creates these irregular movements from here. If you're familiar, I'm sure you're familiar with the actor Michael J. Fox. His Parkinson's. And I mean, he was on a TV show called The Good Wife, where he described it as called tardive dyskinesia. Very similar, not that. That's not his diagnosis, but that's one of the things. My daughter had that. They gave her she had bipolar too. They gave her risperidol. Risperidol is not a great drug, but back then, 25 years ago, that's what they gave her. And I mean, she got to the point she couldn't unstick her tongue. Her neck stopped. I said, "Put your tongue back in." She goes, "Dad, I can't." And we're rushing her to the hospital. She's in there for 3 days. That was an example of that. These kinds of side effects that were so big. So voila, we kind of looked at those areas. Remember, whoever asked me, you saw the interthalamic adhesion, didn't you see that, Rachel? That little edge on the thalamus that you asked me about. So we saw that on one, which is good. You don't have to know any of these things. I don't. If you're going to a graduate level, you probably will. And again, all the thing it does, it's more than just a relay station. And they say it well, sorts edits. Okay, regulating emotion, and so it plays a role in emotion. I mean, a lot of those sensations, how much that made me sick to my stomach. How sick to your stomach it made you. Maybe something that would be like that if you want to think of it. And so this is sort of a coordination area. That mediate is a good word. Sort of, is this important? Is it not? Can I ignore this? And all of these other things. When you talk about arousal, cortical means being awake, as opposed to arousal in a sexual sense, let's say. The hypothalamus, big time player. Okay, the mammillary bodies are important because smells go into that's why they're part of the limbic system. Okay, and the hypothalamus basically is this interconnector. We're going to look at that hard in endocrine. We do that in physiology, and that's really a remarkable area. It's where the blood-brain barrier is weakest. So when we're sensing glucose levels, sodium levels, how to respond to those chemical levels, that's the area. And we respond to that mostly by altering the release of a variety of chemicals and sort of doing so indirectly by stimulating parts of the pituitary, either posterior or anterior. So you'll see the interrelationship between those as we move forward. Because I've got to give you physiology. They have a lot of these. If you ever see somebody with what's called Lewy body dementia, it kind of emanates, I think it has some basis here. Uh, a member of my, let me hold off on that. So I'm sure I hate to misstate something. So the hypothalamus, this is the autonomic nervous system. We get to the point we don't have any control. Blood pressure, heartbeat, digestive, physical responses to emotions. Again, plays a role in that limbic system. So there's a certain degree of perception, but let's say it's not conscious or controllable perception. And yes, some of those biological rhythms and drives that we get come from these areas. As you can see, we're getting more primitive. Because after we go below the limbic system, or be kind of lower in a sort of an inferior part, now we're getting into things that are primitive. And I mean, think what happens when people can't control them. Then we get these terrible people who sexually assault people and brutalize them. And I don't know enough about any of that to teach you temperature, hunger and thirst, all of these things, biological clock. Most of us have our own sleep-wake cycle. I'm the ultimate morning person. I get up early, I go to bed early, comparatively speaking. Even if I go to bed late, I always get up early. It came from years when you operated. Most surgeons who did a fair amount of surgeries, you do them first thing in the morning, as early as possible. Then when you're done, you go make rounds, and then you go to your office in the afternoon, unless it's Wednesday when you play golf. Really, that's what you do. No, I mean, I was always a morning person. Okay, just the way it is. All my kids are like that, because all their jobs are daylight jobs. If you're working 3 to 11 or 11 to 7, you reset your clock accordingly. My wife is a 3 to 11 person. She is. I'm long gone. She's still up, doing stuff, looking at stuff. I come down. Boy, the house looks great. Well, I decide to clean for a couple of hours. But I'm very careful not to wake her in the morning, for fear of my life. So we'll get to house relation. These are all the different disturbances. These come, a lot of them, from hypothalamic dysfunctions that are there. Emotional imbalances. And some people, obesity is more chemically based. I mean, it's odd. I mean, when you start looking about it, obsessive compulsive disorders are where eating disorders kind of filter in. Obesity, overeating is just as much of, we talk about all the typical not eating enough to it. Don't know enough about the pineal gland, sleep-wake cycles, melatonin, best anybody can say. There's not a lot I can't add to that. And again, I touched on these areas. I don't want to give them a short shift. We're going to do the cranial nerves. And I mean, there's just too much information. Again, the ones I point out to everybody, I hoped. Pineal gland, superior and inferior colliculi. Known as the tectum is that posterior area of the brainstem, if you're wondering. We'll do all the cranial nerves. Again, then when they talk about peduncles, these are the white matter tracts, even though they've made them green, coming from the cerebellum. It's so important. Again, that choroid plexus. So that's all stuff that's reasonable. You can look at that. These are very, now we're starting to get, brainstem means we're approaching spinal cord. And we're not to worry about cortex externally. We have little islands of gray matter for the cranial nerves that we're going to go over, and some other stuff sometime. We'll look at that. The peduncles, those are the pyramids. So the peduncles were like pillars holding up the cortex. Okay, and then we looked at the different channels are there. And again, these different, and I'll show you the illustrations better. Like this. So here, let's say the slice from here, this would be upper superior colliculi, which is mostly gray matter, some white. The opening, and they all have a central opening for fluid, cerebral aqueduct. Reticular formation is all about the series of channels that arouse us in the sense of awake and alert. which obviously is not working with everybody here. Hey, look, I'll come in a Speedo. That'll get your attention. You could never unsee that. There's certain sites like that. Tell me you haven't said that sometimes. You see somebody and you see what they're wearing, you go, I'll never be able to see. You're just going to go, damn. What are you wearing? Moving on. So here, these are called, as you might guess, the red nuclei. This is substantia nigra, black stuff. And again, these are those pyramidal tracks working their way down. And again, more so in the pons, we'll spend endless time talking about trigeminal nerve. It's really important. I got to get that out. And here, more of this, more nuclei for a variety of things. There's a lot of the controls, breathing and heart rate, or these little islands play a significant role. The pontine nuclei, again, and then there's not, again, a lot of these areas, without going crazy about all of the things that are there. Again, in the medulla, again, a lot of this are cranial nerve nuclei, and there's the olives or olivary nuclei relaying information, because this is where we spend a lot of information back and forth from the very famous cerebellum. All of these centers, cardiac, blood vessel, respiratory, these kind of reflexes are designed to protect you. So whether you're sneezing, whether you're coughing, that's stuff getting in the wrong place. We don't even have to control it, it's going. When we use those reflexes, okay, like a gag reflex, it's significant. It means that there's damage in an area, and now we've increased the element of risk to us significantly. Vomiting is like that. Something has triggered, a sensor has triggered that there's something in there that we have consumed that potentially is harmful. That's why it's one of the things that protects people who drink a lot in a short period of time, because most of the time it triggers your vomiting. People, chronic drunkards know that, so they just drink a lot and slowly. They don't guzzle it down all the time. You can, not that I should be telling students that. If you consume alcohol slowly, you can consume quite a bit. Do not, young lady, be listening. You know a party girl when you see them. Am I wrong? Sadie, no, we won't tell. You sure you haven't met up with my daughter at any of the clubs? There was only one event on the south side that got her into trouble. Couldn't find a bathroom. And you know what? You got to go yet. I've lived through this. Okay. The cerebellum, precise coordinated movements on the same side. Test question. Ipsilateral motor coordination. That means motor coordination on the same side. Muscle memory. All of those things. Anatomy, I just know the arbor vitae. It's very distinctive. Again, Purkinje fibers are a particular kind of nerve that go from the cortex and from the cerebral cortex to the cerebellum. There are more synapses here. This is information is constantly pouring in to this area. I think there's a whole lot else. The peduncles, worried about it, not worried about it. And you can read through this. Performance, body, of position. I went over that whole thing with that. And you see, it plays a role with other things. That whole thing with Romberg's son, I did in lab, you need to remember. Nothing else there. Okay, so that only leaves me, and that's good. We'll stop here. That leaves me, I do want to go over a little bit in lab, so I'll save it for lab. The EEG stuff, because maybe we'll do one for fun in lab as well.